Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Chantal Dresner. I'm the marketing director over at BioSpace, and I'll be moderating today's session, which is entitled Winning Biopharma Struggle for Talent. So just a few housekeeping notes. Attendee phones are now in listen-only mode. Your questions are welcome. Please submit them via chat. They are anonymous to other attendees, so we will do our best to answer them either throughout the discussion or in the Q&A at the end of the session. If we run out of time, we will try to address them in our post-event communications and follow-ups. And just to let everyone know, the webinar is being recorded. Everyone who's registered will receive a link after the event if you want to share it or review it. So for those who are not familiar with BioSpace, we are the leading news and career site for the life sciences community. We have about 1.5 million life sciences professionals active on the BioSpace platform each month. We also produce research reports on recruitment, compensation benchmarking, and topics relevant to the biopharma industry. So in our most recent report that we released a couple of weeks ago, actually, we surveyed both biopharma employers and industry professionals to gauge what can be expected for 2022 in terms of recruitment and hiring. So now that we've all become, relatively accustomed to the challenges of the pandemic, hiring has really become a key area of focus for many businesses. But it's also proving to be quite difficult at times. So when we did our research, it was at the very end of 2021, we found that over 70% of employers are experiencing quite a drop in the number of candidates that are applying to their jobs. Even more businesses are expecting that the number of their open roles are going to increase this year. So if you also consider that last year we had an increase in employer turnover as well, we are anticipating that it's going to be a pretty tough fight to hire good people. So today we're really looking forward to discussing ways in which we can tackle those challenges to make this year smoother for us all. We've got a great group assembled here today. Thanks for joining us. Would our panelists like to introduce themselves before we get started?
Yes, happy to do so. Hi, my name is Konrad Wietab. I'm the CEO of Leiden Labs.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Zabel. I'm the Vice President of Sales Strategy at Biotricity.
Hi there. It's nice to be with everyone today. I'm Nancy Deisinger, and I'm with Impediment. I'm the Senior Vice President of Human Resources.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rainey Smith. I'm the Senior Director of Human Resources at Glimpse Bio.
Awesome, thank you, and thank you for joining us today. So just to get started, we're going to dive right into our discussion, but I thought it would actually be really helpful for our listeners if you can just give us a little bit of context and an overview of your company, your team structure, the size of your organization, just because that can obviously have a big effect on your recruitment strategies and your hiring. So if you can just kind of talk us a little through about your current situation and where your staff are mostly located, that would be really helpful.
Yes, happy to do so. Thank you, Chantal. So Leiden Labs just started in the beginning of the pandemic, actually. So last year in 2020. So we're still a very young company, now a year and a half old. We're focusing on protecting actually through intranasal administration against the viruses that are out there, so that we are ready also for the next virus. So not so much on single viral strains, but actually broader than that, and through nasal sprays to protect right where it's needed. We had a very exciting growth journey, and we started with a very experienced team, which we have built out now with also young, fresh, energetic talent. We're half based here where I am now in Europe, actually Amsterdam, but also actually different places in Europe, such as Spain, and a different city here, Leiden, in the Netherlands, but then also in Boston. So that immediately, puts, of course, also an extra challenge on working together, being on both continents and making sure that we function, as one team. We currently have about 40 to 50 people, growing to more like 60, 70 over the next month. About 2 people per week joining at the moment. So we're heavily also engaged in these recruiting activities, of course, and to develop and retain the talent.
Great, thanks. Matt?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my company, Biotricity, we started with our first product in 2018 called the BioFlux, which is a mobile cardiac telemetry device. We've grown quite a bit since 2018. I was the first rep at the company, and now we currently have 24 reps across the country. We have some other platforms that we're launching this year in chronic care management and also remote patient monitoring, which is basically chronic care disease. So we're going to have a Biotricity ecosystem that basically has mobile cardiac telemetry, patch technology, also be able to manage chronic disease with our other platforms. So we're excited, but it's going to take a lot of people to hire this year to make sure that we execute on those platforms. So excited to be here to answer the questions.
Yeah, and also, so ImpediMed, we are a medical technology company. We most recently in 2016 launched, kind of moved into a connected device that's in the cloud. And we're monitoring fluid status. We're doing analysis, really preventative for lymphedema and the oncology space right now. Also moving into heart failure, renal failure, working on body comp as well. So we have a diverse team. We have about a third of our population in Greece. We have our software development team there. We're based in Australia our company, and then most of our staff is in the United States, and our focus is in the US. So we're total about 75 employees, so smaller, but also in the growth phase. As far as from a human resources perspective, we are a small team of 2.5 headcount. So we're doing a lot of sharing resources and a lot of outreach. So thank you.
Hi, and here at Glimpse, we're a diagnostics company focused on protein activity with a lead indication in NASH. We are primarily based out of the Boston, Cambridge area. We have about 31 employees and a team of 2, myself and a recruiter. While we are primarily based out of Boston, we do have like a smattering of people across the United States.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks, guys. Sounds like it's quite a range, but I think the one thing that you all have in common is that you're all aggressively looking to grow your organizations this year. So knowing that, let's start off by talking about, what do you think from your perspective, what are going to be some of the main recruiting challenges you foresee this year for the biopharma industry? Is there anything in particular that sort of keeps you up at night? What do you kind of see are the key challenges here?
Well, I can speak for Biotricity, and the challenges that we've had is that, we're really focusing in on really good sales talent and engineers. And so we're recruiting from, larger companies. And so because of the pandemic, you have some salespeople, engineers that have gotten comfortable, maybe not just totally happy with their current position, but it's a little bit risky to take a chance on a smaller company that hasn't been proven in the marketplace. So we've got to do a really good sales job on selling these folks to come over to join us through compensation and stock options and stuff like that. So that's what we've been doing these last couple of years during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing that across the board. A lot of people have actually become increasingly risk averse and are, I think, definitely valuing sort of like one common theme while all the craziness has been going on behind them. So like, if work has been consistent, I think that's, reassuring and comforting to people, but it does seem that this year, I think hopefully more people will be willing to make the move. Nancy, what do you think? Have you been seeing sort of similar trends, or what are you seeing from where you sit?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more people that are starting to explore the market, but we are seeing definitely a lack of available talent, and the competition has definitely increased. So definitely going up against counteroffers, employer counteroffers as well. So really need to make sure that we are competitive and moving quickly.
For us, I can, for Glimpse, we just recently rebranded and launched our new platform technology. So for us, name recognition and getting our brand out there is going to be a big challenge for us, on top of kind of what everyone else has already spoke to. I think it's going to be important for us to find creative ways to connect and engage individuals where they are and find meaningful ways to attract them, to Glimpse.
Yeah, and also from my side, I think what we see, and what I heard also before, I think the war on talent is over because talent has won, which I think is actually great from that perspective, because I think that's also makes it for all of us, here on the panel, but also, in this call, of course, it puts a burden on us to really think about, what does the talent then also need, basically to feel part of the company, which is a struggle. And I think growing, as I hear also here from the panel that we're all trying to do, is of course very difficult. And also while you're growing, roles change. You want to keep the people developing also within that. So I think it's also about that retaining, and when you find new talent, that it actually fits well. We really want to move now from where we worked a lot through our own networks, which was pretty broad, with hiring people, now also making sure that we really attract people from outside of those networks as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think that a lot of talent right now is, I think people are open, but a lot of people are already employed. There's only a very small percentage, I think it's like 3% of employed professionals right now, when we surveyed them, that said they would not look for another job and absolutely not be open to any new other opportunities. And a significant proportion are actually saying that they would consider the right opportunity if it came to them. So I think it does demonstrate that people are more willing to consider new roles now, if they see them or if they're contacted about something specific. So, given the environment, I think it's becoming increasingly not viable for employers to just post their jobs and sort of just leave job postings open. I think we're having to become a lot more proactive. Are there any more proactive recruitment strategies that you find have been working for you? That can cover a lot of different things. Someone was actually just asking about recruiting, like process outsourcing. Is anyone working with either external recruiters or trying more creative tactics to reach that passive talent?
Yeah, so at Biotricity, we were pretty lucky that for pretty much the first 2.5, 3 years, we were able to use our own network. But as we grew across the country and looked at areas that we wanted to put salespeople in, get engineers from, we actually engaged a few recruiters. And what that does is it kind of takes the vetting process a little bit out that we would have to do normally, and so they can find us really good candidates in areas that we want to go to, and so it's been really good for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've definitely utilized recruiters. Some of the other things that we've really been able to benefit from are employee referrals. I feel like we're seeing actually more of those, which is a great sign. We're trying to do things around employer branding, just to have a presence on LinkedIn, to share a little bit more about the culture, to give people a better feel. We're not having people come on site even for interviewing and seeing the culture. So really trying to express that outwardly as much as we can. Yeah, and then just, of course, reaching out to candidates actively. So going after passive candidates, not just waiting for people to apply.
On the employer referral front, is there anything specific that you're doing to try to ramp that number up? Are you reaching out regularly to your current employees? And I think that often sometimes people can forget what roles you're hiring for. Do you send out reminders or send out requests to your existing team of just reminding you that we're hiring for these roles? Or how do you remind people to kind of get those referrals and to forward people over to you? And do you put any incentives in place for that? For anyone?
Yeah, sure. I can speak for Glimpse in that we did put a referral program together so that there's cash involved if someone makes a referral and the person stays. We're big on Slack, so we have a Slack channel, and anytime there's a new posting, we post it there and encourage folks to get on LinkedIn and to share and to like and kind of that good stuff, just to get some momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't have any internal program like that set up, but what we do is actually discuss regularly what do we need, and not only from an exact role description, but also from just, additional people. And then through those discussions, we come up with, okay, different names. And then I think on that, approaching passive talent, I think what's also very helpful there, what I found at least over the last year, is while you're speaking to those people that might actually end up, they don't want to leave where they currently are, which is completely fine, because I think that should be the case. But with that, you actually speak, then also about other potential candidates that they know that might be. And I think through that second step, we've seen also a lot of success in getting great people on board as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay. And in terms of your employer branding, I think that term gets bandied around quite a bit. But in terms of sort of like building up that employer brand, what are you doing and how are you investing in building that brand? And, I think culture is something that, a lot of people are very interested in and want to know more about what it's actually like to work at that company. What are you doing to kind of highlight that brand and highlight that personality?
I think for Biotricity, obviously LinkedIn, Twitter, posting, to, kind of get what we're doing, launching new products. So, multimedia is what we've been using predominantly. So that's what we've been doing.
We've been doing the same at Glimpse. To take it maybe just one more step is, not only publications and things like that are happening, but if we do any company activities, we're, making sure that we're taking photos and we're posting and hopefully, kind of showing folks a little bit of the personality of Glimpse to give them a sense of what it feels like to work here.
There's no pictures. It didn't happen. So
right.
Yeah, and obviously that's gotten harder, with everyone remote to be able to show those activities and pictures, but doing that as much as you can. And also trying to highlight some social responsibility. We've had a lot of opportunities over the past couple of years to bring up a voice on different initiatives and things that are happening in society. So to try to give a little bit of a feel of how the company stands for those things that people will hopefully connect with.
Yeah, and what we did is also, I think as many of us, but really work through, our values. Where do we really want to stand for? And, one of the things is, for example, we call think viral, think different, because I think, at least for the people at the smaller companies, I think it's also important to think different. And then trying to let that come back in everything we do. We had a press release earlier today, but also there, we could follow the general guidance on how to do the PR strategy, but rather do it, in a slightly different way. You have to stay within certain boundaries, but and I think with that, trying to communicate it while we can. What are those values? This is one example, but of course there are also others there to be consistent in that.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of, the culture, the values, one of the things that we know that has become increasingly important to industry professionals is flexibility. A lot more people have become increasingly conscious of work-life balance, needing flexibility. There's a lot of people who are parents who have kids at home sometimes when they're working. Everyone's getting a lot more challenges in terms of balancing that. So we did see like a big shift in the last couple of years around attitudes and practices around remote hiring as well. I know a lot of companies now are still continuing to hire remote. I think the majority of companies are actually continuing to be open to hiring remote workers. Now that we're sort of like further down the line with remote hires, are you still hiring remote? What have you learned, over the last year or so? Is there anything that you're sort of doing differently now that you weren't at the start? And are you doing anything to mitigate challenges that you're now more aware of with remote hires going forward?
We are still hiring remote, and depending on the role, of course. We actually put in place a strong and pretty broad, formalized flexibility program for the organization, kind of embedding it in our culture for the long term. But to your point, lots of challenges. So building and maintaining those connections in this type of environment is that type of challenge I don't think is ever going to go away. I think what worked during the pandemic, like early on, kind of the Zoom and, you know, those types of things, it helps, but I don't think it's a long-term solution. And so, you know, for us, as we're thinking about the challenges ahead, I think it's how do we create opportunities to get people together and to help build those connections, and doing it, you know, making sure that the connections are productive, and then also thinking about leadership. Right. So leaders are super important when it comes to engagement and all of that good stuff. And so when you think about making sure that your managers are equipped to handle, you know, the remote work relationship is going to be really important. So I think thinking that through and developing some programming around that will be important.
And are you finding that when you're talking to candidates, like the appetite is still there to have the remote work, or do you think that people are actually like, oh, you know, I kind of miss seeing people face to face? And how are you communicating those options with employees? Like, do you find that they're sort of leaning one way or the other a little bit more? And how much do you talk about that when you are talking about your culture and talking about, you know, the jobs that you have open and what those options are?
Yeah, I
now
think
you have to actually like present it up front, and you know, when you're doing the postings, people want to know. And when you're working with recruiters, they will say there's some people that won't even talk to you unless they can do remote. So it definitely is a conversation that occurs right away in the process, and just having to show that you do have that flexibility if you're able to, right? And being able to hire remote for certain positions. But yeah, that's definitely a critical part of the hiring process right now.
Matt, were you going to jump in there too?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we talked about it earlier. I feel like I had Zoom lash over the last couple of years, if that's a term. So yeah, I mean, our employees, you know, I have some sales reps that have been here for almost 2 years and have never met face to face because, you know, we've had to do everything virtual. So yeah, you can really sense a buzz with people are wanting to get together and get back out there, and you know, but I mean, we've had to hire some remote techs and we still have to continue to do that. That's just our new world we live in now. So, but yeah, there's a definite energy to get back out there.
And Conrad,
I think it's just difficult, right? It never get easy. Also, my previous company in management consulting at McKinsey, you see that also already in the beginning of the pandemic, it's very hard for teams, you know, to be fully remote for a longer period of time. So it's never. I mean, people need a little bit of, and it really depends on, of course, where you are also in your career path. I think the big advantage we see is that, you know, being remote, we can, you know, hire the best people, no matter if they're, you know, in Austria, in the UK, in the US, you know, or even further away with somebody in Australia, which is, by the way, for time zones between Boston and Australia, and then also trying to combine it in Europe, it's very difficult. But it also gives a lot of advantages, because that's why, you can see the best people across the world. So. And then next to that, doing as much as we can, even by walking outside or with very limited people together in the office, trying to balance that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will just add that there's some people that really do want to be in the office. So you get the full spectrum really, and that's where the whole flexibility comes in, and being able to see how you can work that out the best and be able to have those touch points.
Some interesting questions are actually coming in about the remote work versus in-office workers. So there are questions about like dealing with internal equity when you're onboarding either new employees versus onboarding those who maybe weren't eligible for work when they started, or, you know, the differences between onboarding experiences or compensation if they're coming from remote work. Is it kind of, you're trying to standardize as much across the board, or are all these sort of programs and, you know, compensation strategies actually different when you're dealing with remote workers versus dealing with, you know, in-office hires? And have you had any challenges from that from your employees in terms of, you know, if they're talking about, you know, differences in experience or compensation? How do you handle that?
For us, we're trying to standardize as much as possible. So there shouldn't be a ton of difference. Even some of the benefits that may normally go to just people that work remotely. We're trying to make sure that that we're applying them a bit more broadly to make sure that there's a sense of fairness, right, in whatever the program design looks like or feels like.
Mhm. Okay. Go. Oops.
No, I'm happy to. Yeah, so exactly, and it becomes more complicated across different countries to standardize. And for example, those benefits, as you're talking about, Rainy, so because then it becomes really complicated because of the different tax systems in different countries. It's almost impossible to standardize. But you know, that is a challenge, of course, to make sure it's all completely fair. You know, no matter whether you're in an office, in a hub somewhere, or fully remote, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to that really quickly. You're absolutely right. Like I have it pretty easy right about now when it comes to that. But I would just add that I think communication is super, super important, right? I mean, I think, you know, you're not going to make everybody happy. And so you do the best you can to explain and to be logical about it and communicate. And I think, yeah, you can push through.
Yeah, and I would just say too, because it's such a good question of how do you manage that? And I think trying to focus on, they call it, you know, remote first, right? So you're figuring that most people are going to be remote, or we are at the situation right now. So how do we present those programs in a way that's going to work great for people that are remote? And then of course, people in the office, you internalize that as well in those situations, and then being sensitive to the, like you said, international, you definitely have some variety there and some differences in that aspect, but communicating those. So yeah.
So following on from that, a really great question just came up, actually almost directly related to that. So for people who are in the office or who are lab-based, has anyone thought of any like brilliant or creative ideas that they're implementing for those people so that they feel like they're getting, you know, some of the benefits that maybe they feel like they're missing out on with remote workers? Like, are there any or like bonus perks that you're trying to include so that they don't feel like they're getting like the short end of the stick, if that's how they're feeling?
I mean, for us, you know, like Conrad was talking about earlier, we want our employees to feel like they have equity in the company. And so, you know, stock options, rewarding, you know, employees for performance with stock options instead of just cash rewards. You know, that'll keep your employees there. They see the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so that's kind of what we've done at Biotricity.
I think also highlighting what it is that you're doing, right? So there's certain perks that people who go into the office get, right? We have food delivered, and we have, you know, maybe activities on once a month or something like that. But I mean, I think also highlighting some of those other things that they may get to take advantage of that maybe folks outside don't. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so kind of following on that then, something that came up in the research that we did was that a large number of employers are actually quite concerned about wage inflation. So as Conrad kind of mentioned earlier, you know, it kind of feels like talent has won that war, and they sort of have the upper hand, so to speak. But when you're talking to candidates, do you find that their compensation expectations are in line with the reality of the market? And sort of how do you handle those conversations if they feel that they are at an advantage? How are you talking to them about those compensation packages if you feel that they are unrealistic to a certain extent? And what do you do to kind of talk them around to something that is more realistic?
I would say, if I can jump in, for us, it's really talking about holistically of what they're getting from working at the company, the benefits of working in a smaller company, being in healthcare. Obviously, it gives a great purpose to what they're doing. Different things that we're able to offer, the equity, of course, having that ownership in the company, more of a family-oriented type of environment. and just really talking through the whole package and really what's being offered to them, and not trying to focus solely on the compensation. But certainly I think the expectations have increased, and so we've had to take that into consideration, potentially doing sign-on bonuses, different things to be as creative or competitive as we can.
And longer term, Rainey, you had mentioned in previous conversations, that you're getting more creative with compensation, and for example, that you're focusing as well longer term on learning and development. Is that something that you are communicating regularly with candidates too? And how are you talking about that? What questions are coming up?
Yeah, well, it's another, I guess, just another piece of the pie, right? So like Nancy was talking about, you think about the broad and the total package, right? The whole picture of what you might get if you come to work, for the company. And so the learning and development piece is, I think if you take the time on the front end during the interview process, particularly the recruiter, as well as maybe the hiring manager, you can start to get a sense for what they need, on an individual level, and how they want to grow and develop their career. And maybe that's something that you can offer, right? And so then you can cater interviews, questions and answers and things like that toward it. But it's just another way to try to engage the talent, and show that you can be the place that can give them what they need.
Yeah, and I think, and with smaller growing companies, it's just the excitement in itself, right? It's yes, the purpose from being in healthcare. It's I also think the excitement and making sure, which is sometimes difficult if you have interviews over Zoom, for sure, but making sure that people feel that excitement, when they're coming in, I think also helps a lot. And that's in the end, I think, where a lot of us also are driven by, right? To do things that excite us, to make sure that we're part of a growing company, or even a growing organization, which is also that I think which is very important to get that across.
So something that we touched on earlier, a lot of people are obviously either actively looking or sort of just keeping an eye out for new opportunities. There's a pretty good chance that your current employees sort of fit into those categories. So I was hoping we could talk a little bit about retention as part of an overall growth strategy as well. What are you utilizing in terms of retention strategies to keep your good employees? What are you doing to make sure that they're happy? I know burnout is a really big concern, especially while everyone is so focused on growth. A lot of people are working really hard and long hours right now to make up for the fact that it's slow to hire. So what are you doing to sort of make sure that you're keeping people happy and they're not sort of at breaking point?
Yeah, for us, what's been really important is new products. So we're getting into these new platforms with chronic care, and so these are kind of areas in my space that have kind of been unexplored. So it's kind of like we're looking for pioneers to go with their great relationships and try these new devices that help, especially in the pandemic. I know that CMS is really wanting all the patients they can to be out of the hospitals, out of the clinics, like anything you can do to monitor them from home through the cloud using technology. And so, that's kind of what we've done, try to keep it interesting, that you're not just, here's your product, go sell it. Nothing's going to change, but you're happy and secure. Like Conrad said, I mean, we're selling excitement, and that you have an input and a voice in the company, and you can really be impactful. So that, there's risk going to work for a smaller company, but there's also that upside that you really can't get at one of the bigger, larger companies.
Yeah, I love that, actually, making sure that there's new things, right? New products in your case, Matt,
Yeah.
but indeed thinking, what are other things that somebody can do, which sometimes is outside of somebody's direct role, or even indirect role, but are there some pieces where she's very good at, and which is separate, and then giving her to run with that, so because that keeps that extra momentum, which Matt, I love that example that you give, right? To give additional products or give additional things which can be also separate, I think, and that keeps people very I don't want to overuse the word, but keeps people excited to to actually work on something new, and then also retain them. And of course, at one point, also if somebody has a great opportunity somewhere else, which is just a better fit, I think you should also learn to live with that as a company. So that also excites other people, that they see a great clear development path in the company as well. So I think that's the balance there as well, which of course is very hard if people are leaving, which you think are great. But I think showing that you then still care for them also afterwards, I think is also very important.
Yeah, I think that mission-driven piece is super important to make that connection. For Glimpse, when we think about engagement and retention, we of course want to make sure our total rewards programs and practices are fair and of course market competitive, and that we get creative when we need to, but it's really only a part of it. We want to make sure that we're really focusing on creating an environment that people can thrive. The good for us, we have a small leadership team, and they really do take the time to connect and listen to our team members. So you asked a question about like, how do we stay connected? I think that just making sure that we're having conversations, one-on-ones via Zoom or otherwise, to make sure that we're listening. And then that way we can either be proactive, hopefully in some cases, or react quickly when necessary. And for us, we're still small, so that's possible, but we are, thinking about the scaling that we're going to be doing. So setting kind of a baseline with an engagement survey, I think is going to be important in the relative near term. And then I think just coming back to communication, it's so important that we're making sure that we're transparent, right, about where we are, where we're going, building that excitement for the mission, and making sure that people are engaged with us, and then also communicating and staying connected to their own individual growth, and that we're doing what we can there. Yeah.
And there's been renewed focus as well, like on mental health and overall wellness. I know that's something that a lot of employers, when we surveyed them, said that was actually going to be something that was new either for this year or for last year, actually. Has anyone started more of a mental health program or wellness program, and sort of how have they found the uptake and like the employee reaction to those programs? Are they using it? Are they ignoring it? Are they grateful and taking advantage? What has been your experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've definitely been very proactive even before the pandemic, but especially over the last couple of years of really focusing on that, taking advantage of resources that we've had through our HRIS or different insurance agencies on their programs, utilizing those for training for resilience. I think that's a big thing, mental health. So doing lots of little small trainings for people so they can do it over time, get outside, walk with their AirPods on and do the trainings there. So I think that's been super important. And again, it's really showing that flexibility, knowing that people have issues with their families or different things that are happening, and recognizing that and giving that kind of empathetic leadership. So I think that would be the main thing that Impediment's been focused on.
Great, thank you. So we do have a few questions that are actually coming in. Unsurprisingly, there's a lot of questions around compensation and negotiation and equity, which I know that we've kind of touched on before. We do have people asking sort of what companies are sort of willing to negotiate on when it comes to negotiating with candidates. Is it beyond salary? Is it, relocation? Is it time off, remote? Like what is sort of negotiable and what's not? And, in light of this kind of challenges with standardization that we talked about before, how do you negotiate with candidates on those things?
Yeah, I think the most important, what I found, oh, sorry, Matt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is to which is not easy, by the way, so I'm not saying that I figured that out, but it's to really trying to understand for that particular person, like we said, the talent has won, so let's figure out what the talent needs and wants, and then seeing where where can we find a win-win actually then, right? In terms of is somebody looking to have flexibility because she's a windsurfer, or so wants to pick up when there's wind, but then for the rest be super productive, and then next to it, but trying to see where are the things that you can really optimize both worlds, because then you end also in my mind also optimize the output. But that's not always easy, because you have also certain boundaries, of course, that are there as well.
Yeah, all I was going to say for us is, we kind of sell the space that we're in, especially because of the pandemic. And, our company fortunately has done really well because of the pandemic, because remote monitoring is such more in the clear view of these physicians that knows that the reimbursements there, and the patients, if they can monitor them at home and not in the clinics per se, then that's better for everybody. But yeah, we've just sold the space that we're in, the different platforms that we're going to launch, kind of the vision of, would you be happier over here? If I have employees that have been here for a few years, we just got FDA approval on a new product that we're coming out with. So I think it's kind of not being stagnant and kind of keeping it going, keeping your employees going on the company vision, I think is real important.
So we've had a great question come in, and I'm curious who's going to want to answer this one. So we kind of talked about counter offers earlier, and the question is, what is your stance on extending counter offers to retain an employee that has put their notice in? And actually, something that we had discussed earlier was having the experience of candidates who are essentially going through the interview process and receiving an offer to actually get that counter offer from their employer. So how are you handling those conversations with your employees, and sort of how are you retaining those employees, for example, who are putting their notice in, and how are you negotiating that counter offer, and if you're choosing to make that counter offer?
For me, I could say that, it really depends on the situation. I think you really need to look at what is it that person's really looking for. If they're not happy in their current role, really, what is it about that? Is there something that can be changed? So it's not always even the compensation package, but, sometimes that conversation obviously comes in. And I think we've had to be open to being flexible in different areas and recognizing that. But a lot of times it's not just, the compensation. It's really looking at what is that role, maybe moving them into a different role that they're more interested in. And that's where you need to have those conversations sooner than later, right? So more of those stay interviews. So definitely we've had to look at that. I think during the recruiting process, also sometimes the external recruiters can be a little bit more helpful in this too, of coaching the candidates on what happens if they do get a counteroffer, and and how they can address that. So trying to have those conversations as much as you can throughout the process.
Sorry, did someone have something to add to that? I know that we had someone else jump in there. Yeah.
I would just second what Nancy said. I think it's every individual is unique, and I agree that usually it's not compensation might be one thing, but it's usually something else as well. And so making sure that you understand that before you go in with kind of the next steps, I think is really important.
Great. So we've got one question on employee value proposition, and sort of how you are positioning your organization and how you market to candidates as well. If anyone would love to, we'd love to hear about how you create that employee value proposition and how you choose to market that, and how you kind of work it into your organization's brand as a whole. For someone who is maybe just starting out at creating that employee value proposition, where would you kind of provide some guidance in terms of how to start?
I would say to start with your current employees and talk to them, find out, what is it that drew them to the company? What is it? Why do they like working there? Why do they stay, working for the company, and really understanding that, because I think that's going to speak to people externally as you're talking to them. So that would just be my starting point, my suggestion.
Rainey, I know it's something that you've been working on this last year as well, particularly as a newer company. Is there anything that you can add to that, or anything that you felt has made that course smoother for you?
Well, it's a work in progress. I will say that. And I think, what Nancy described is exactly what we spend a lot of time doing, is talking with folks. And now it's, what's next, right? How do we then create that story from our employees' perspective? And where does it go, right? Does it go on LinkedIn? Where does it go in, if there's a poster on Twitter or on our webpage, right? How do we then take that information and create the story that is Glimpse, and what it's like and what it feels like to work here? That's what we're mid-process of.
So one of the things that we've done, especially on the sales side, is, we are talking to a candidate and we give them a few names and numbers on the sales team that have been here for several years to, call those employees and get the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, they can kind of let their guard down when they're not interviewing and actually talking to someone that's been at Biotricity. And, it's worked really well. It's kind of an honest approach, and so, we've kind of done that a little bit in the hiring process. So someone was also asking, we've talked a lot about sort of attracting passive talent from other organizations and other companies. Is anyone attempting to hire employees with, no or minimal previous experience, then actually training them internally? Is anyone running any kind of more almost like apprenticeship schemes or anything like that, where you're hiring more entry-level people and then training them within the company?
We're doing that more, I would say, on the software development side. So using internships and our office in Greece. That's been really successful for us over time. So being able to do that, really get them a first job out there in the industry and get them trained and promoted up into the company. So that's worked out well for us too.
And how are you actually finding those people then? Are you doing that through, advertising or partnerships? Do you have any working with any organizations as a feeder, for example, that feeds people into the program?
Yeah, a couple different, I think, working directly with universities and going on site to when you're able to, participating in different activities that they have to really show the company and get the name out there, and looking for other types of organizations that are doing the same thing.
Great. And so I think we're going to start to wrap up here. So I think that the last question was really about are there any, we've kind of talked a lot about the challenges that we've seen, but are you seeing anything positive right now that we can kind of feel a little bit excited about? Are there any opportunities you've seen that are new and exciting for you that you have found that kind of, leave you with a little bit more hope and make you feel a little bit more excited about the future?
Well, I can speak to that. We're actually having a live training as we speak. So I have actually 6 new employees that we're training in person, not on Zoom, and so that's exciting. So yeah, we're hoping to do a lot more live trainings in 2022.
That'll be nice. It'll be a nice change.
Yeah, I think I have a lot to be excited about. I think it's a great, the advantage. I think there's also a fantastic generation of people now having the first, 5 years of work experience. And I think I really like, a lot of people are purpose driven, and it actually fits well, with healthcare, with I think Nancy, that you've referred to earlier, to have that purpose driven. So I think that's also a very positive angle. And then indeed, hopefully, Matt, we can get more and more again, in person introductions, and that would be very welcome as well. And hopefully we'll get to that.
Yeah, I'm also definitely hopeful for more in person and being able to go back into the office more frequently, for sure. And I mean, just the industry itself, and certainly where Glimpse is and all of us, the growth and, the success, I think, is exciting, right? I mean, I think there's a bright future, and it's, the war for talent is certainly challenging, but but it's never easy, right? And I think the fact that passive candidates are more open in some ways can be potentially useful, maybe just a little bit more work to get to them. But I think it's a good sign. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's always exciting to be bringing new people into the company and new experiences and to hear what they've been doing, especially over the past couple of years, and how we can learn from those experiences, bring them into the company. Definitely looking forward to having more in person. We're starting to do that a little bit. And great to hear, Matt, that you've got your in-person training. So really, I think our training programs have really had to develop and grow over the past year or 2 years. For onboarding and making sure that people really can be successful in their position. So that's just been a huge change for us. And I think we've made a lot of progress there, but we're always looking to do even better and improve that for getting the real good candidate and employee experience.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So just for everyone that's listening in, this event, like I mentioned before, has been recorded, and we will be sharing the event's recording with you pretty soon, probably, hopefully tomorrow, as well as all the data points that we kind of referenced throughout the conversation, and all the information that we pulled from the research that BioSpace did. We will be sharing that report with you as well, so you can go back and reference. There's definitely points. How many people are looking for jobs right now? What are the kind of the toughest areas to recruit for at the moment? What are the sort of times to hire? That's all going to be in the report too for you to peruse. So I want to say a big thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. I think it's been a really great conversation, and I think hopefully the year won't be as sort of dire for recruitment as we had it made out to be, at the beginning of this conversation. I think that there's a lot of really exciting things that everyone is doing, and kind of as Comrade said, it is almost an opportunity to, force us all to be better in terms of how we market ourselves, how we position ourselves, how we talk to candidates, and being forced to really listen to what they truly want, which is great for us too, because we all work for organizations as well, and we can all benefit from that in the end. So I think it's going to end up being really positive for work-life balance as a whole. So if you have any final comments, this is the time to make them, but otherwise if you want to impart any last pieces of wisdom.
I do.
Listening. Oh, please do.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I was traveling in the airport the other day, and I heard somebody say Happy New Year, and the guy said, no, Happy Better Year. So that's what I've been saying to people is Happy Better Year. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's lovely.
That's great. Yes.
Yeah.
Happy Better Year.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you to BioSpace and to Chantal for putting this all together. It's been great conversation. We've learned a lot from everyone too.
Thanks, everybody.
It was fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, all. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.